Good evening, Chicago. I'm Andy Zopp, along with my special guest co-host, the Fulcrum U.S. Executive Editor, Hugo Balta, and this is Chicago Newsroom 2.0.
Swati Staley and Matt Johansson join us this week's roundtable to unpack the latest developments in ICE's continued deployment across Chicagoland, the growing pushback against Mayor Johnson's corporate head tax, and the state legislature's approval of a $150 billion bailout for regional mass transit.
The leaders of Instituto del Progreso Latino, Association House, Erie House, and New Life Centers join one of two special roundtables for a conversation about area nonprofit engagement with ICE activity in the community and the strategies these and other organizations are employing to keep their clients safe and connected.
And the leaders of Northwest Settlement House, the Kindness Campaign, and UCAN come together to share how nonprofit organizations are stepping up to support families affected by the SNAP reductions, impacting nearly 2 million Illinois residents.
We've curated an important hour of news and information just for you.
And it all starts right now. This week on an extended news roundtable, we're taking a deep dive into the stories driving conversation and confrontation across our city and nation. First, ICE continues to wreak havoc across Chicagoland. In recent days, we've seen the father of a child battling cancer released only after massive community outcry. A man living with schizophrenia detained by federal agents and later dropped miles away from home. And an appellate court ruling that temporarily shields Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino from daily court appearances over the use of force in Operation Midway Blitz. Meanwhile, the U.S. Supreme Court is asking for further briefing before ruling on whether the National Guard can legally be deployed in Chicago, keeping the city in a tense state of uncertainty. Then we turn to City Hall, where questions are mounting over Mayor Brandon Johnson's proposed corporate head tax, a plan to generate new revenue by charging large employers per worker. Some business leaders say it's a job killer, while the mayor insists it's a fairness measure that makes the biggest corporations pay for their share. But with pushback building inside and outside of City Council, is the head tax dead on arrival? Over at CPS, the school board voted to pay a $175 million pension bill, a move some call fiscally responsible, while others call it temporary patch on a long-term problem. And in Springfield, the state legislature passed a $150 billion mass transit bailout. Supporters say it's a lifeline to cities like Chicago, where the CTA has struggled with safety concerns, staffing shortages, and falling ridership. Critics argue it rewards inefficiency and leaves riders wondering what, if anything, will actually change. So who are the real winners and losers in this bailout? Transit system workers or the everyday commuters still waiting on platforms that feel less safe than ever? Joining me now to help unravel it all, our roundtable regular Swati Staley, partner at Just Act Partners, and her colleague, the co-founder of Just Act Partners, Matt Johansson. Matt, Swati, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Swati, let's start with you. I just mentioned that ICE actions grow more and more aggressive. A father detained with a child battling cancer, another person suffering from schizophrenia. The question for you is the escalation, what does the escalation say about federal enforcement priorities right now?
I mean, I think they're completely misplaced. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It seems like there are no bounds to the level of cruelty that's being imparted on our communities by ICE and the federal government right now. I think there is rightfully community outcry based on the lack of coordination, lack of cooperation with local authorities. It truly is just a reign of terror by ICE. The idea that a father who was able to see his child released from the hospital that is suffering from cancer to then almost immediately be picked up by ICE is just, it's inhumane. It's intended to provoke outrage and create a distraction from the broader issue at hand, that is ICE's presence in Chicago, and frankly, the outrage can only be reserved now for the most extreme cases of ICE's overreach in Chicago. And that, to me, I think is part of the plan, there is an intention by the federal government and specifically by ICE to be able to provoke outrage in a way that we're only able to focus on a few instances, like the individual who was picked up who has schizophrenia and then was dropped off miles away, the child who has cancer, the father of the child who has cancer. But the reality is that we are seeing so many individuals who have absolutely no criminal record, no connection to anything untoward, and are decent human beings just trying to make their way in the United States, that it truly is just an abomination. It's horrific, and the level of cruelty just continues to be accepted and normalized in a way that is really quite terrifying.
Yeah. Terrifying, and these are not the worst of the worst, as the Trump administration had said all along. These are our neighbors. These are our members of the community. Matt, advocates say that these incidents are not isolated but systemic, that ICE and Border Patrol are operating with no oversight or regard for due process. What mechanisms exist, if any, for communities or city officials to hold them accountable?
Yeah. Not enough, I think, is the short answer. But I think let's even step back. Both of these questions and the entire thing still are framing this as enforcement action. Mm-hmm. I think we have enough evidence that this has nothing to do with enforcement action. This would be the most insane way to actually proceed with a true enforcement action. That is not the intent nor the process that is being followed. So you're right. So we are just being subject, in my opinion, creating context for civil unrest, which creates context for militarization, which creates pretext for canceling elections, right? That's where we're going. This has nothing to do about enforcement. But what do we have at our disposal to do? You've seen the governor, you've seen former Mayor Lightfoot in the last week announce efforts, kind of larger scale efforts and more coordinated efforts to gather evidence, to make sure that we are keeping a record for posterity for when the time comes when we can do something, when there is a sane administration that will allow us to pursue justice for what is happening today. So that is there. And the rest of this conversation, the rest of this hour is built around community groups that are doing the things on the ground for their communities, and it's heroic and it's impressive to see. So we're not helpless, but let's stop talking about this as enforcement actions, because it's not.
Yeah, and laying the groundwork to a possible 2028 presidential run for a third term. So what you're saying, the normalization of seeing the military in the cities sets up the stage for that.
That's right.
I'd like to turn the page now and talk about Mayor Brandon Johnson's corporate head tax and the CPS pension payment. Swati, the mayor's proposed head tax aims to charge large corporations, as I mentioned, per employee, but business leaders warn it could drive employers out of the city. Is this a smart progressive revenue reform or political symbolic overreach?
I think it's political symbolic overreach. I absolutely think that corporations in the city of Chicago should pay their fair way. I think that there are alternative strategies that should be put forth by the corporate community as well as the mayor's office. This particular approach seems short-sighted. This administration has actually had some really significant wins on attracting great investment and business progress within the city of Chicago during his term. The announcement of IQMP, the opening of the Advocate Campus in Roseland, the idea behind the 78, 1901. There's incredible momentum happening for major projects across the city that the mayor can claim as wins. However, all of those are major employers that may be impacted by this tax, and the scale and reach of the tax, while the mayor continues to say that it only affects the top 3% of employers, has a significant impact on employers across the city of Chicago that have built new headquarters, have invested in the city. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't determine if there's an alternative way for corporations to pay their way. there has to be a balance, though, because Chicagoans are dependent on these businesses for employment, and there's continued investment happening in the city of Chicago that is driving this city forward in a really great way. However, if we chill that progress, we're going to harm the citizens of Chicago at the end of the day.
Yeah, and the mayor just seems not to get out of his way with some of these ideas, some of these more realistic ideas.
Yeah.
Now, Matt, the city council appears split. What does the division tell us about Mayor Johnson's standing with key allies as he tries to close $1 billion budget gap?
Yeah. Tenuous at best is what it tells us, right? And I don't think that's changed much with this issue or anything over the last several years. And I would say, we talked about it last time we were here, right? That this head tax is just a blunt axe instrument. I'm certainly favorable, and I called it last time, right? A move in the right direction in that stayed away from real estate taxes and grocery taxes and other things that the citizens of Chicago cannot bear right now, and also start to address, what is one of our biggest societal ills, right? Is just rampant income and wealth gap, right? And so, yes, we need to find ways to see those that are profiting from Chicago's citizenry in great ways to pay their fair share. But the way it's being proposed is just a blunt axe that, and it's not even a sharp, you brought it out of the woodshed. This is an old one we've already put away once, right? So I think there's more progressive ways to be finding ways for corporate America to be paying its fair share in recognition of this wealth gap that has been created over the last several decades.
Yeah.
I also think, if I could just add, that I think that the method of this sort of implementation of this tax also creates prime opportunity for employers to pass this along to employees in some way through either a reduction in benefits. We've been trying to get the loop vacancy, office vacancy is still above 25%. We're trying to get more people back into the office. We're soon going to talk about the transit system and the need for increased ridership. I think all of this is connected, right? If we don't have, if we have the ability to give employers an incentive to continue to increase remote work, to not have a vibrant financial district, to stop making investments on the south and west sides, we are perpetuating a whole host of other issues too that I think ultimately employees, not employers, will bear.
Yeah,
and I think will be really interesting, this special city council meeting that's been called this week, and calling EY in to talk about their $3 million report on the budget, right? We barely touched on it last time. We need more austerity here, right? It can't just be increased revenues, right? When your revenue increases in the budget proposal are double what your efficiencies are, right? That's in the wrong proportion, right? And so both the Chicago's Future Financial Task Force, led by Jim Reynolds, and the EY report had hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of cost-saving initiatives that need to be pursued with as much vigor as we are raising more revenue.
Yeah, and we'll certainly continue the conversation as we continue to approach the deadline for a budget proposal. Matt, let's continue the conversation with you. CPS just voted to pay its $175 million pension bill. On paper, that sounds responsible, but is it sustainable?
No, right? It's paid entirely off of this TIF sweep. It has felt all week like it's just left pocket, right pocket, right? And so, and there doesn't seem to be anything sustainable about the way it's being paid.
Yeah. Let's move quickly to you mentioned transit, another bailout, $115 billion of federal bailout to be exact for mass transit has been called both a rescue and a reward for dysfunction. Which is it?
I do think it's necessary. I think that, one of the beautiful things about Chicago is our transit system. It makes this city, in theory, very livable, very traversable. It makes, the south side to the north side a short commute, in theory, right? Of course, there's a whole host of issues, including safety, upkeep, all of that. But our transit system is incredible in and of itself. The fact is that we have not had an agency that has been able to govern the entirety of transit. And so we have not been able to make any movement. What I think is exciting about this potential move is that it does create finally an authority that really will hopefully have a little bit more bite when it comes to actual governance of transit. The CTA is woefully understaffed. We have safety issues and ridership is down. All of those things have to change. And as I mentioned in the last part of our conversation, the need is for more riders to feel safe and to be able to have a place to go. And so we need to be able to make some of those investments. Otherwise, we will continue to lose traction, and our system will become obsolete. And I think if we don't maintain this incredible asset that we have, we will fall even further behind without any recourse further down the line.
Yeah, and I think there's no argument that the CTA needs funding. But the biggest question and really debate is it going to where it's needed? Is it going to be to fix historic problems, or are riders, as you said, going to see the difference and feel much safer? Matt, what do you think?
We can only hope, right? I mean, it's hard to say, can you guarantee me this will work? Is it the silver bullet? I think in life we know there are no silver bullets, right? And it's still a government entity. But I will plus one Swathi's comment, right? I was more hopeful in the creation of a single administration for RTA, CTA, and Metra, right? And bringing those consolidations, you have an opportunity for efficiencies and to bring what is good about each of them to all of them. So I think yes, and I think you have to improve and then get the utility of that improvement, and then improve and get the utility of the improvement. It's not going to be overnight. We're not going to flip a switch and then all of a sudden ridership back to pre-COVID levels. But this is we talk about winners and losers. This is a utility that the most vulnerable in Chicago rely on day in and day out. All right, and so I wouldn't even call it a bailout, but to not stabilize it is failing those who need it most.
And I will also say that, to again reiterate the benefit of having this Northern Illinois Transit Association now created as a result of this legislation, is that it's the first attempt at systems level change that has been woefully required for so long, and no action has been taken. So I do think that there are no shortage of things that the dollars should go towards, primarily safety and upgrades for riders. But at the end of the day, I think the thing that excites me the most is the ability for there to be at least some functioning governance that can hopefully continue to advance infrastructure improvements, safety, and continued expansion, frankly, of our transit system. We still need to see the Red Line extension happen. We still need to see improvements to stations. And so all of those things have to start somewhere. And I'm hopeful, no guarantee as Matt said, but I'm hopeful that this could be a start to some systemic, significant improvements to what I think is one of the greatest assets of our city, which is our transit system.
Yeah. How do these budget choices, a potential head tax, a massive pension payment, connect to larger questions about trust in public institutions and the city's long-term fiscal health?
Yeah, I think it's a mixed bag. I think, there are some instances that we can point to say that we are showing some financial strength to really be able to reverse some actions that have really been quite systemic and have plagued the state and the city for a long time. But I think what we really need is a long-term strategy about how we're going to get out of long-term payments that we've not made, or excessive debts that have eroded our system of systems of transit and frankly our pension system. So I do think that I do see the transit payment as a step in the right direction. I see the pension payment that CPS is making as necessary, but not a long-term solution. And I see the budget as something that still needs some work, still needs a significant haircut in order for us to really have trust that our leaders are good financial stewards of our tax dollars and are willing to make the hard decisions that will allow the state to have more financial sustainability and longevity.
Yeah. And trust is built. Talk about trust in public institutions. Just to show my age, right? It is hard to fly like an eagle when you're running with the turkeys, right? And what with the example that we get out of DC gives nobody trust in our institutions, but locally I am proud of things that we see. I'm proud of how the mayor is standing up against ICE and the governor is standing up against the administration, right? How we're standing up for each other here. Trust is built in right steps, right? Yes. It does not have to be long-term. It doesn't have to be sustainable. Make a commitment, keep a commitment. Make a commitment, keep a commitment. That is how you build trust over time. It's not going to happen overnight, but that is the recipe. And so like Swati said, some of these things that are steps in the right direction or at least moving directionally the right way, those are opportunities to rebuild trust.
Yeah, lots of challenges and opportunities. Swati, always a pleasure to see you.
Great
Matt,
to see you.
a pleasure to meet you.
Absolutely,
Thank you very much
too.
for your time and for your insights. On the other side of this break, Andy sits in conversation with a roundtable of nonprofit leaders to discuss how organizations like theirs are working overtime to keep clients safe and connected in face of intense and increasingly more volatile ICE activity in our community. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Bianca Cotton, inviting you to tune in for a new episode of Behind the Confident Smile, where we discuss with Kiana Jones what it's like to turn your frustrations with the educational system into change. Tune in on CAN TV Cable Channel 19 or stream online at cantv.org or on the CAN TV Plus app. Elevated conversation and storytelling. Experience the power of community television.
Across Chicago, fear and uncertainty are rising again in immigrant communities as ICE activity intensifies, from arrests near schools and workplaces to raids that have shaken entire neighborhoods. But amid that fear, Chicago's nonprofit community is stepping up, offering not only safety and legal guidance, but also solidarity, compassion, and the promise that no one will face these moments alone. This week, we're joined by the CEOs of 4 organizations at the heart of that response: Instituto del Progreso Latino, Association House, Erie House, and New Life Centers, each working daily to support and empower immigrant families through education, advocacy, and community care. Together, they're navigating a difficult balance, protecting clients while maintaining open doors, confronting fear while building trust, and finding ways to keep families connected to vital services that even as deportations and detentions disrupt lives. Corina Ayala Bermejo, CEO of Instituto del Progreso Latino, Juan Carlos Linares, CEO of Association House, Cristina De La Rosa, CEO of Erie House, and Matt DiMatteo, CEO of New Life Centers. It's a pleasure to welcome each of you to the newsroom. Thank you so much for being here to have this important conversation.
Thank you, Andy.
So first, I think let's let our audience understand what it's like on the ground. Most of us are seeing pictures in the news and stories on TV, but you're actually seeing it every day, face to face. I'll start with you.
Thank you, Andy. It is a privilege to be able to walk with our families during this time, but it is the most intense times that I can recall. Yeah. So to be able to be present in the community where it's all happening, right? We're on the corner of Blue Island and Western. We have over nearly 1,000 high school students. We serve 25,000 families. So as you can suspect, we have at least 25 students and their families who have been directly impacted. This is hitting close to home. ICE has been within our site, and who isn't on a signal call getting rapid response alerts every second? And if you miss 5 minutes, you've missed so much. So it is, again, privilege to be walking through, for me especially as a once undocumented kid, to lead an organization that is really being present and available for all immigrants to ensure that they can come to school, be safe, but we're juggling a lot.
Yeah. Juan Carlos?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I would start with, so groups like Association House have served immigrants us particularly for 126 years. So this is nothing new to us in terms of the service that we provide. You mentioned at the outset fear. There's definitely fear, but we're seeing a turning point. You're talking to us today. There's a lot of unity coming out of what's happening today. So Karina talked about the signal chats. You know, part of our responsibility is to be part of these rapid response teams as well. So if you're, like you said, 1 or 2 signal chats, maybe not more because you want to focus on your specific area. We are in Humboldt Park and we are seeing, even today, immigration enforcement coming up and down the streets. One thing I do want to note though is we're going to talk about families and who we're serving. When we talk about unity, it's not just the unity of the folks that are coming out in rapid response, but there are children who are being left behind as well. When ICE takes a family, right? You have children being left behind. We do foster care work, and it's been both heartbreaking but also unifying to see how many folks come out to help those families.
Okay, we're going to come back to that unity point. Matt, how about you? How are you managing all the daily calls and responses?
Yeah, it's heavy. Our team, we reactivated our community care warehouse. We're seeing our food lines stretched longer than before. But I would say it's a spiritual issue, and the fact that our church services are down almost 50%. It's a business issue. We're seeing 60 to 80% drops in businesses on 26th Street, income, et cetera. It's an educational issue, so we're seeing 25% plus not showing up to school at all. And people are living in fear, wondering, can I go out? Should I go out? Will I be taken? I mean, think about being in their shoes, literally have a group hunting you as you leave this space. And it's the fear of kids wondering about their parents being okay. And so what we've decided to do is really to try to walk with families. Unfortunately, we can't tell them they'll be safe, but we can say we're with you, we're standing with you, we see you, we love you, and we'll do everything we can to walk with you and protect you.
Christina, how about you? What are you all seeing?
Much of the same, like my other colleagues have expressed. Erie has also been supporting immigrant communities for 155 years, much in the tradition like association house, we're settlement houses. Excuse me, but we're definitely seeing folks that are scared to come out. They want to know that they're going to be safe, and we can try to assure them, we can try to educate them, make sure they know their rights, they understand that. And really for us, it's a matter of keeping our doors open. We know that oftentimes we are a safe space for folks, and so we want to make sure that our staff are trained as well to make sure that when we do have participants in our spaces that we're doing the best to protect them as well.
Yeah, so I just want to follow up on that. So what are some of the steps that you're taking to protect your clients?
Yes, so we definitely have protocols in place. We had an unfortunate case a couple weeks ago where somebody was apprehended in front of one of our sites, and so it really gave us a moment that you can practice all you want, right? You can have it on paper, you can go over it, but when the reality presents itself, we took a time and a moment to think about what we could have done better. So it's definitely improving that, enhancing communication, but it's really know your rights and really making sure that folks know that if you are confronted by ICE or any of these other agencies, like how do you want to handle yourself, so that hopefully you'll be left alone. Oftentimes we all have seen it's not the case.
Right.
And I would add that we have legal services as well, and part of it has been keeping up with the Know Your Rights and the bystander training and the Migra Watch and informing individuals who are part of our volunteer arm to come with us, and it's a lot that we're asking, but a lot of folks are asking, how can we help? And that's exactly how you can help.
For people who are watching, Karina, talk a little bit about what you'd say to the volunteers. What do you ask them to do?
Absolutely. Of course, we always need attorneys, we need law students, but there's a space for everyone. The power of being present during these times, just to document the atrocities and what we know are constitutional violations, are essential. The state has a task force created, and we are funneling those pieces of evidence because in due time they will stand trial as well. So yes, it's important to keep safe, but when you have individuals standing in front of the school and guiding them in, it's a visual reminder for the students that community is standing with them, and that's really meaningful to young people and to those entering our doors and keeping doors open. But to volunteers, there's no shortage of opportunities. Instituto Chicago.org, there's volunteer forums, and every one of our organizations have them. And the food pantries. I mean, we have expanded our food pantries to twice a week. We need volunteers. every one of our organizations can handle more volunteers, whether you're a lawyer or whether you are just a community member or someone who wants to come and be in community with us. There's a space.
Well, that's great to know, Juan Carlos.
Yeah.
I assume you're taking and welcoming all volunteers as well.
Absolutely. And I would add two things. Number one, this is for the general public. Vote. Right, so we have, we're nonpartisan organizations. I remember having a discussion with one of my staff members. Again, not a political discussion, but he was surprised at what's going on. He voted for, you would presume, this happening because he's an immigrant from one place, and he thought immigrants from other places were unfairly getting cash and this and that, and that wasn't accurate, right? And so now we're seeing the effects of that. So I think education and awareness in the next campaign is going to be super important. Again, we're nonpartisan organizations. The other side is this, though. I think our organizations are uniquely positioned for these times in that, for example, a lot of the people we serve, a subset of them, have already been justice involved. Right. So, and they're at our organizations because they want to improve their lives. What does that mean? We've already had protocols on security in our buildings where we don't let law enforcement in unless there's a warrant. We work well with our law enforcement agencies. Who would have thought, though, that this day and age we have hard lockdown protocols for federal government threats? Right. That's where we find ourselves. Right. So in a sense, we're already prepared for this, but the intensity of it and where it's coming from is surprising.
Is it impacting at all your relationship with the Chicago Police Department? How is that working?
Yes, in one way. So we always had a great relationship with our police department in the first place, but now we find ourselves looking to the police department for protections in different ways. And I'll add this. I'm teaching a law school class right after this. We talk about this in class. There are two kinds of laws, briefly. One is the things universally everyone thinks should be prohibited: murder, arson, assault. These are malum in se laws. Then there's malum prohibited. Everything else we make up. Immigration is a paperwork issue, right? So when you see federal enforcement violating people's rights with these, with assault, with chemical, weapons, with kidnapping, to what end, do we as people, as citizens, and with our Chicago Police Department, to what end do we accept that in our neighborhoods? So these are the questions we're asking. Right,
really, really important questions. What, Matt, let me ask you, what about your relationship? Do you work with the police at all, the Chicago Police Department? And I think they've had a really hard time kind of navigating some of the pathways we're seeing.
Yeah, so we have community violence intervention work we've done for 15 plus years. So we respond to every shooting in Little Village, Pilsen, Brighton Park. We're seeing the response, et cetera. And we have built a strong relationship with CPD. So we've built that relationship where we have communication, we have professional agreements and understandings. The CVI field has grown. But this is now in a space that we've never had, where it's federal agents coming at us, and CPD will be called to a scene. 2 weeks ago, 27th and Whipple in Little Village, I came out of a site visit, and there's a Black Hawk helicopter above us, 200 feet in the air. I've never seen one in my life. There is tear gas being deployed on my team. I had to order 200 respirators and gas masks for my team being out there. And then CPD shows up, and you have the intersection of that. And I talked about this in the last few weeks with both CPD, the city, et cetera. And how do you have the intersection of CPD trying to create safe spaces? And it's usually from whatever threat, violence, things. But now you have a federal threat coming at our teams and attacking. And with all of the sanctuary laws, all of the different things that we have in Chicago, it's a gray area that there's no plan for. It's uncharted waters, and so CPD's in a tough bind spot. The federal government is doing whatever they want to do, and we're stuck in the middle. And so I think we've had plenty of conversations the last few weeks, and we continue to have to work it out.
Right. So what about, are you all feeling, as your organizationally, are you feeling, Christina, any pressure from the federal government regarding your funding? Are you getting hostile letters from, some one department or the other about how dare you help these, support these illegal immigrants?
So we have not received any letters specifically putting pressure. However, policies that have been in place have been impacting our work. We're an early childhood provider. And so right now we don't know if the next funding cycle will come through. So it's definitely impacting the programs that we're offering at this time. Our ESL classes have been impacted as well. Civics, we have partners. You've probably been impacted as well, Karina. But definitely, we're feeling that pressure in that sense. And we've also just started to think about how we're going to prepare our organization for any type of inquiry that may come our way as well. So making sure that we're in compliance and that we have all of that in order. And then talking with our allies, right? How are you preparing your organization? How are we sharing resources? We mentioned it briefly earlier, but it really has brought a lot of us together to think about how we are going to govern moving forward. And this is just the beginning. And so what are we doing to protect that?
Right. This goes back to something you started with, Juan Carlos, about unity. So are you all finding ways to coordinate with each other and other organizations in your space?
Absolutely. We have each other on cell phone. We talk regularly. We have, even within the network, an Illinois Latino Agenda call on Fridays early. The CEOs are connected, and I think that that's unique, and it's pretty amazing to have a city and a state that's so unified. I would say that the recent policy issues have impacted all of our organizations. When you touch SNAP, when you touch Medicaid, and perhaps insurance cost, all of that touches all of the nonprofit work that we do. Specifically, Instituto had a USCIS grant cut, and we're the largest submitter of citizenship applications in the state. That's undemocratic. So luckily it was replaced, but to the unity of that, right? ICER came in to the rescue. And I think that oftentimes we continue to do the work because we know that we have each other's backs, but boy, is that target huge on all of our backs.
Right. Right.
If I can add, so a couple things to what Karina mentioned. So I was privileged to go down to Nashville in April, May. If we remember, a lot of the immigration enforcement and a lot of the violations started there in Nashville. And I was surprised to see so many Latino-led organizations and African-American-led organizations, but they weren't really connected, right? And so that's something you see in Chicago. We've had that connection for a very long time. So again, we're in some ways well positioned for that. The other thing that I'll add is with regards to the signal chats and our rapid responses, there's a value add to our level too. I would say we're the grass tops in some ways. So there's folks who are coming out, staff in particular, who want to do more. People want to do more, right? And there's a place for everyone, as Karina said. Maybe it's not the folks blowing the whistle, but maybe it's, and I have to give credit, the governor, a connection to the governor's office, the mayor's office, letting them know in real time what's happening so that they can mobilize their teams as well. So I would say again, we've been well positioned. Of course, the threats will keep coming. So we just have to keep being active.
Right. I think it speaks really very well about kind of the strength of Chicago's not-for-profit and service community, right? We have been deeply connected for a long time, and this just gives us a place to elevate that and work and use it, which of course is so incredibly important. Matt, you touched on something earlier that I just want to ask others about, because I think it's really important, is that when people think about this, they think about just the immediate horror of kind of what we're seeing with these arrests and the violation of people's rights. But there's this other, kind of trickle in the lake around businesses and schools, and you work closely with the schools. Are you seeing a drop in attendance from students?
Yeah, I do see some decline, but to Juan Carlos's point, the resiliency is there. They want to come to school. They want to show up. So it's about making sure that we don't close our doors, that we're always open, but then talking through what's the next set of issues that we need to be familiar with. But we are. Across the city and across the state, you're seeing a decline in attendance. You're seeing a decline in businesses. You're seeing the outcome of what happens when you remove and mass deport a large portion of those from Chicago. You're not just seeing jobs that are on the ready. You're seeing businesses close, right? Because there's this symbiotic relationship that happens when you have an infusion of funds in the community that's no longer happening, right? So there's that to consider, and you see it, you feel it. You walk down La Villita and you see the impact. You see many less vendors, and restaurants are reporting like a 60 to 80% dip. Wow. And that has a chain reaction of other consequences, right?
So that then leads to kind of, this has to have a huge mental health issue on people directly impacted, but also the broader community. Are you seeing that, and are there things your organization is doing, Christina, to help address the trauma of what's going on here?
Yes, we do have a behavioral health department, and we're trying to connect families that have been directly impacted with some mental health support. It's already been something that our community has needed, and so you're adding this other trauma that's being inflicted in community that it doesn't have to directly impact you. It doesn't mean that your family member has been detained. I mean, they're doing this in front of young children, in front of schools, in front of daycares, in hospitals, in front of clinics. And so it really is, how are we wrapping our arms around folks to deal and to process what's happening. And the other piece is our staff. Our staff have been great. All of our organizations have teams that have been responding. Your team is out there like all the time, rapid response, right? We're all responding at different levels. And so we're now thinking about how can we better support our teams as well. Listening circles facilitated by our clinicians, making sure staff are aware of our employee assistance program, and they have access to these resources. And now we're thinking about how do we make this sustainable.
Yeah. Anybody else doing anything special to help your staff or your community on mental health?
Yeah, I'll just add that, and this goes to your previous question too. So one of the resources we lost, and the answer is going to be, we're just doing more with less, right? And there will be a call to action on that as well. But one of the things we lost earlier this year was our AmeriCorps program. Back in April, we did receive a letter from the federal government saying, go ahead and fire all your AmeriCorps now, right? One thread that weaves between the immigration enforcement and these letters is kind of a lack of competence. The letters aren't clear, they sound political, and so that's what we're dealing with. Later in June, the federal government came back and said, we're just kidding, keep them all, right? But as you can imagine, these young people come for a specific reason. They left because they had uncertainty about their job. That is our outreach arm. So for us, it's really training volunteers then to be that with us, right? And so that's part of the Signal Chats. That's part of our board. That's part of our auxiliary board, right? Is bringing them together, training them to be part of the outreach work with us.
Okay,
Just being aware of the vicarious trauma.
All of you, we are unfortunately running out of time, but I know each of you has a website. So all of the organizations that we've talked about here, Erie House, Association House, New Life, and Instituto del Progreso, and you all have information there about volunteering and how to engage if people want to help on these issues. And people are stepping up, and I hope people will continue. I cannot thank each and every one of you enough for the work that you're doing in a really difficult time, in a difficult space. It's important and it's hard. And we're grateful that you're there doing it. So thank you, and thank you for being here to share. On the other side of the break, the CEOs of Northwest Settlement House, the Kindness Campaign, and Krista Hamilton, CEO of UCAN, join Hugo to discuss the SNAP crisis, the immediate fallout, the longer-term risks, and what can be done to protect our most vulnerable neighbors as the government shutdown continues. Stay with us.
I'm Watis Gaddings, inviting you to tune in to the next edition of Sisters Talking, when the sisters and I discuss colorism amongst Black women.
Head of this department said, your resume looks great, you have great experience, and you certainly have the right look. I don't want to pass the light skin test. I'm a Black woman.
Join the conversation Tuesday at 7 p.m. on CAN TV Cable Channel 19 or stream online at cantv.org. Elevated conversations and storytelling. Experience the power of community television.
I'm Curtis Tarver, inviting you to tune in to the next Brothers Talking, when the brothers and I talk about Black male sexuality, myths, shame, and liberation.
Being with my wife, intimacy doesn't equate to sex. Intimacy is being able to open up and say, I'm hurting.
Join the conversation Tuesday at 7 p.m. on CAN TV, Cable Channel 19, or stream online at cantv.org or the CAN TV Plus app. Elevated conversation and storytelling. Experience the power of community television.
Welcome back. We turn our attention now to the human cost of Washington gridlock. As the federal government shutdown stretches past the 1-month mark, uncertainty is growing over SNAP benefits, the food assistance program that helps feed more than 1.9 million Illinois residents every month. A federal court has ordered the administration to use emergency reserves to keep payments flowing. But even so, families across Chicago are bracing for delays or partial benefits. Meanwhile, food banks and nonprofits are scrambling to fill the gap, warning that shelves could run bare just as holiday demand spikes. So what does this mean for working families, for seniors, for the local organizations trying to keep people fed? Joining us to discuss this unfolding crisis are Carol Wood, CEO of Northwestern Settlement House, Christopher Watts, founder and CEO of the Kindness Campaign, and Krista Hamilton, CEO of UCAN. Krista, Chris, Carol, thank you very much for joining us. Carol, I'd like to start with you. We're already hearing reports of food banks and pantries seeing record demand. What are you seeing on the ground, and how quickly are families feeling the effects of SNAP uncertainty?
Unfortunately, families are seeing the effect immediately. So we've seen a huge surge in the number of people showing up at our food pantry. We have also seen families show up that we've not seen in over a year. So we've seen new families, we've seen families hoarding food. People are really worried about what's going to happen when they don't have SNAP benefits.
Yeah, so there's a lot of concern happening right now, and especially with what's the back and forth politicking that's happening in D.C. Chris, the federal government says it can't release new SNAP funding without congressional approval, while courts are ordering partial payments. From your perspective, how much damage does this political back and forth do for public trust and your ability to support locally?
Well, right now, people are hurting right now. And people are used to disappointment in life. But over the past few months, what has come from government, it's been like I've never seen in my lifetime. It's hard out here, but as us organizations, many organizations out here are responding, we're mobilizing. Some of the demands I haven't seen since COVID. I think as we get closer to Thanksgiving, it's going to get even higher as more people just get into that panic and even beyond hoarding things run out. And even in addition to this gridlock, we have to think back to March and April when the tariffs started, some things changed at the border. The amount of food that's coming in from Mexico and South America, the amount of food is just decreased. So at the same time with prices going up and it's less food available, people's SNAP benefits being cut is very been very detrimental, so people are hurt right now.
Yeah, we're looking at the government shutdown compounding an already volatile situation. Like you've mentioned, food coming from the southern border as just one example. Krista, let's talk about Feeding Chicago. If SNAP payments are delayed or reduced in November, how ready are Chicago food pantries and community kitchens to respond?
Well, it's already delayed, so that's not an if, it is happening right now. So I will say you can, we do not have a food pantry, so I am working with partners like Carol and Christopher, and we're setting up some things. So we're reaching out to our funders and our partners who already has to do this work to set up something at UCAN, because our clients, they turn to us first, and not only our clients, but our staff. So UCAN, about 25% of our staff, they receive SNAP benefits. So now they're going to have to make the tough decisions. They have to eat. So they'll have to make the decision, do they pay their bills? Do they pay their rent? Or do they buy food with that money? And as Christopher mentioned, the cost of everything is so much more. So we're looking at a compounded rippling effect of impact. Not only is it going to be about food, but now their other bills and obligations will suffer.
Yeah, really making tough decisions about putting food on the table or keeping the lights on. Yep. And one of the things that we were talking off camera is the need for collaboration. Yeah. I know that you two were already talking about delivery and pickup. Right. What can you talk about the collaboration that's needed at this moment in order to help the most vulnerable?
So I think we need collaboration between nonprofits, we need it with government, and we also need it with the private sector. So earlier today, I asked Krista, would it be helpful if we deliver food for some of their clients, because we have the ability to do that. But the reality is the uncertainty based on the government gridlock has made it really hard for planning for all of us. And so I think it's going to take all of us really coming together to figure out how do we help the most vulnerable right now. How do we, I asked Christopher, can you help me buy more turkeys, right? So things like that, I think we're all just going to be really more interdependent in terms of how we solve this crisis for our families.
Yeah, Chris, you mentioned how the government shutdown's already compounding pre-existing challenges, but beyond households, and just talking a little bit further about that, what are the broader economic consequences for grocers, local markets, and neighborhood economies as this government shutdown continues past the 30-day mark?
So as we have less people in the store spending money or shopping without SNAP, what's the need to schedule the amount of people that stores have been scheduling? So when people start receiving less hours and or get laid off, it just add more people that's in need without money. But I will say this, we're community leaders, right? Everyone up here. We got to our positions because we can lead. During times like this, we step up and figure it out. And many times as a leader, I figured out a plan, didn't know how I was gonna pay for it, didn't know how I was gonna get it done, then it just happens by the end. So right now I would just say this is that I've seen a lot of collaboration between the organizations. I haven't seen people trying to ration opportunity and resources from an organizational standpoint. The kindness campaign itself, just reserve cashes that we've had, we're just gonna put it out here. Now it's the time to use it and not just sit on those things. And what we thought we was gonna have it for maybe 6 months from now, we'll just have to figure it out then, have a whole 6 months to figure it out.
What is the responsibility of local government? Just a couple of minutes ago, Krista was talking about people making tough decisions between putting food on the table and paying rent. What should local elected officials be doing while the federal government continues to be in gridlock?
I think local elected officials have a responsibility to their community. And so they need to, one, be advocating in DC, right? But they also need to utilize their resources, if it's menu money, partnerships, corporate partnerships, things like that, to help serve the communities that we elected them to serve. And so I think local government, your alderman needs to do more to help provide food and resources and try to make sure that more people are employed. Because I think to Chris's point, the longer this goes on, the fewer people are going to be employed, more people are going to be hurting. So local government's got to really step up. I think the state's done a nice job. They've put $20 million into food pantries, but I think they're going to have to do more, the city and the state.
Yeah. Krista, what are your thoughts in regards, we just mentioned the state government, Governor Pritzker has talked about mobilizing state emergency funds. Should Illinois step in temporarily to fill that gap, or would that set a dangerous precedent for state budgets?
That's a great question. Yes, they should, to the extent possible. I think one of the things, in times like this, people turn to nonprofits to support. But we are being impacted by the government shutdown as well. Many of us are, either fully government funded or our budgets are 50% or more government funding. So we are experiencing difficulties and crisis trying to keep our workforce and our doors open. So I think it's kind of a both and. Yes, we have to put money into the economy for food resources, but then also we have to support those nonprofits that everyone is turning to right now in this time of crisis.
All of your organizations are doing a wonderful job of not even just getting ready, but acting in regards to helping the most vulnerable. This program certainly helps in getting the word out and what's available with your organizations and others. What more can be done from a communication standpoint so that families know what's available to them, especially during this time of the government shutdown?
I think social media is a great platform, as much as we can communicate resources where people can find food pantries or resources that they can get supplies or whatever else they may need. So through social media, programs like this, I know all of us are pretty active in our communities, and word of mouth is always great. But yeah, so and people can donate. So donate to our organizations. We're always looking for people's talent, time, or their treasure to help us move the mission forward.
Yeah, you've already mentioned it. In these times, the community really comes together, and it's a collaboration of not just organizations, but the community itself. I'd like to hear, Chris and Carol, what more can viewers that are watching the program do? Volunteering, certainly, donating, certainly. What more can we do?
I think really volunteering, we've seen just a surge in people who want to volunteer for us, who are asking what they can do. So I think that's really helpful. donating both, we'll take food donations for sure, but the reality is we need money. So to do the work that we do, we need money. So I think if viewers want to donate to any of us, that's a great thing. And be advocates, continue to talk to your elected officials, remind them of these are people we're talking about. These are people's lives.
If we can for a moment look beyond the shutdown, all of you have spoken a lot about the need for government, local, state, federal government, to invest in nonprofits that are helping the most vulnerable. Once we get through this emergency, because I think we can call it emergency, what is needed from your individual organizations past this shutdown in order for you to continue to do the work that you do in service of the community? We'll start with you, Chris.
I think government could always move a little faster with things, getting decisions out, processing payments and things of that nature. But I want to jump back to your previous question about what we could do. And I think I would have to say to community members and families is that we must be resilient during this time. What we have to do is look back on what happened not too many years ago with COVID. We can't start hoarding. We can't start panicking. That's just going to make it worse. I also think that from a government standpoint at the federal level, they can stop giving hope when there's none. Every day I hear about another failed vote. They know if them votes gonna pass or not. When you having this vote, you giving people hope like, hey, maybe government will reopen, SNAP will get paid, and not just that, people will get paid for the jobs that they're working or maybe get called back to work. If they know that they're not gonna pass, and they know this before they vote, stop having the votes. They're placing hope there on an everyday basis when people cannot be sitting at the edge of their seats, and that daily disappointment when you get your hope there, it's just very draining on people.
Yeah, certainly we need straight talk coming from the federal government about the voting that's happening, as opposed to, as you've said, give false hope. Another thing that Chris mentioned and has mentioned in the conversation is about COVID-19. We've been here before, right? A similar crisis. What are the lessons learned and best practices that we should be drawing from COVID-19 and applying it to the government shutdown and how to help vulnerable communities? We'll start with you, Krista.
I think we learned a lot about how to manage through unprecedented times. We're in another one. And for UCAN, we learned how to pivot, right? Pivot quickly. Food is not one of our core services, but we were able to pivot in COVID-19 and give out PPE and give out food. So once again, we're in that space. So we're kind of stopping some of the daily things that we're normally doing, and we're making a pivot to be responsive to the community.
Pivoting. Carol, what do you say?
So I think Northwestern Settlement has been around for 133 years, and our strength is our ability to meet families where they are and provide the resources that they need. In COVID, we were able to really do that. We were able to double down and help families get through it. So I think resilience, cooperation, teamwork, those are the things that are going to get us through this, remaining calm and steadfast in the work that we know we need to do.
Yeah, calm and steadfast, as you've mentioned, Chris, we've been here before. What are your thoughts in regards to, in this moment, the ability to see beyond the emergency? I mean, you've already mentioned a couple of things that people can do to help, like volunteering, the work that your organizations are doing. We've talked about the local and federal level, but how do we resist that panic mode in this moment? What advice for families that are facing this crisis?
Well, I know the one thing you don't tell someone who's panicking is not to panic. I think that I always reminded people how we've been through worse. Always letting them know that we don't have that far to go moving forward, and then giving them something to be hopeful for. So you always have to be honest. You always have to be straightforward. And sometimes you just got to have those tough conversations, and be, which include not having an answer. So, I've had people reach out to me and they was asking me about, will we be able to do this in December? And I was telling them I can't even see that far right now.
Yeah.
What I thought I would be able to see and do in December, that changed last week. I'll figure it out as we get there. There are some things that I know we'll be doing. Our programming will stay the same. Our markets will stay the same. Now, how that looks, I'm not necessarily sure And but by that time, they need to trust that I'll figure it out, and the other leaders at other organizations will figure it out. It's been demonstrated that we can pivot, and people will act outside of their normal operations to meet the local community needs.
Yeah. Pivot, teamwork, collaboration. Chris, Carol, Krista, thank you so much for joining us. Andy?
That's our time for this week. Thank you to all of our guests for joining us in conversation and community.
And thank you, Chicago, for making space for CAN-TV and Chicago Newsroom in your day.
We'll be back next week with an all-new edition of the Newsroom. Until then, be well and well-informed.